Almost every single person enjoys Super Bowl Sunday, from the wings and dip to the special commercials and the most important game of the NFL season. But wasn't always a Super Bowl Sunday. In fact, there wasn't even an NFL at one point in the college world. Today, you, the audience, are going to learn a brief history and summary of the NFL history. First, I will start off with a brief summary of football itself and how it came to be, and then I'll go to a larger picture of the NFL league. Next, I'll transfer into the different teams that came about in the NFL and how it transformed in the league, and then I will discuss how the Super Bowl came to be within the league. On September 17th, 1920, a group of men joined in Canton, Ohio to create the National Football League. According to Pro Football Hall of Fame, the first football game was actually played between Rutgers and Princeton in 1969, but most of the rules weren't developed until 1869. There were 11 teams that met on this 1920 date to form the National Football League, which is outside of the college areas. The 11 teams that were there were the Akron Pros, Canton Bulldogs, Decatur Staleys, Chicago Cardinals, Cleveland Indians, Daytona Triangles, Hemet Pros, Massillon Tigers, Minutemen Flyers, Rock Island Independents, and the Rochester Jeffersons. At the beginning of the 1920 season, the Buffalo Americans, Chicago Tigers, Columbus Panhandles, and Detroit Heralds joined the league, as well as the Massillon Tigers left. According to the Chicago Bears webpage, there were two teams in the NFL that are still in play today, which include the Decatur Staleys, who are now the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Cardinals, who later transferred to be the Arizona Cardinals. The first rivalry within the NFL started in 1922 when the Bears and the Green Bay Packers played their first game against one another. This rivalry now holds the longest standing games played between two teams, with the Packers winning with 96 wins, Bears with 94, and 6 ties among them. They also recorded the first ejection within a national football game, playing against each other. The second point, the NFL had a rivalry for many years, the AFL. The AFL had there were actually 4 different AFLs, 3 of which failed, and the 4th which succeeded for 10 years. After 7 years of being independent, the two leagues decided to start playing a national championship against one another to see who would be the best. This started the Super Bowl, which transformed later on into what we have today. The AFL stood alone for 10 years, in which they started in 1970 or 1960, and then in 1970 the AFL and the NFL consumed the AFL, and they joined to produce one league. There was now a championship matchup, and the teams actually played each other within the season instead of just being 2 separate seasons and then joining into one season. And then later on throughout the league, they were divided into 2 conferences, the NFC and the AFC, so still keeping their same names, the National Football Conference now, and then the American Football Conference, keeping them 2 separate. And then within the AFC and NFC, there is the AFC North, NFC North, AFC South, NFC South, AFC East, NFC East, AFC West, NFC West, and within each of those 16 or 8 divisions, there are 4 teams per division, leading up to 32 teams. After the 2 leagues started to play one another in the championship, they changed the name to the championship to the Super Bowl. The first 2 Super Bowls were won by the Green Bay Packers, and they had one of the greatest coaches of all time during these 2 games, which his name was Vince Lombardi. This led to the trophy of the game being called the Lombardi Trophy. And there have been 51 Super Bowls played. Out of the 51 games played, however, only 20 teams have ever won a national title within the Super Bowl. There are a few teams that stood out amongst these 20 teams that are clearly some of the best teams in the league that ever played and are debated to be some of the best teams in the league. One, according to Mike Tanner from Bleacher Report, that the undefeated Miami Dolphins in 1972 were one of the best teams, but there's highly debated between also the 1985 Bears and the first two ever Green Bay Packers teams. That is because the way the games were played, they used to have 14 game seasons, in which then they switched to 16 game seasons. In conclusion, there's not always been a Super Bowl in these fun and eventful Sundays, but as you can tell from this, the NFL has grown tremendously and has developed way more than people ever thought it would.